Welcome to the Elokus channel, and this is class number 6 in the second discourse of B'Shasha Ekdimu 5672. This discourse is called Oteh or Kasalma, and this is again class number 6. We are now concluding the first chapter in the second discourse, which is the 5th chapter in the general book. And we were holding over here at the end of Perek Hey. And the point over here that he was making, and we were learning, was how similar to the way it is in our human experience, that the Or Pnimi, the internal light, matches up with the Keli, with the vessel, and the vessels are particularized to be able to facilitate the energy. And therefore the energy is very particular on which type of vessel it comes in. Like the intelligence goes into the brains, and the emotions go into the heart. Power of movement and that itself divides on the hands and feet, but that itself divides itself. The more refined power of movement goes into the hands. The less refined power of it goes into the legs, and so on and so forth. So same as also in the supernal realm above, that the lights are commensurate with the vessels, or the vessels are compatible to the lights. And the supernal man above, same idea. The lights, the oiros of the spherois, the lights of the vessels, of the attributes, are match up with the vessels. And even though sometimes they flow into a lower vessel as well, but as we were learning last week, that's only the external element of that particular energy, not the internal. For example, the internal element of the intelligence, of the divine intelligence, is only in the kelim of Chabad, only in the vessels of Chachma bin Adas, but not in the lower vessels, even the Pnimius Amidos, even the innermost of the midos, of the emotions of Chagas, Chesed, Gvura, Teferes. They only get a ha'ara, they only go a ray of the mochen, they don't get the etzem mochen. That's what we were learning last class, and now we continue. And to further prove this point, he says, look what it says in Eitz Chaim Shara Partzufim, in the portal of Partzufim, which means configurations, probably Dav Gimel, or I would imagine that's what that is. Zelle, and this is what it says. Ki ikar hamoichin hu b'chinas neshama pnimis. Over there he makes an interesting statement that when we say mochen, we speak about the mochen of Atzilus, the mochen of the divine realm of the world of Atzilus. We generally think it's the Chachma bin Adas, which the intelligence is made up of the Keli, the vessel, together with the energy, together with the neshama, together with the Or. But he says over there, no. When we speak about mochen, the main power of mochen is the neshama, is the soul of it, the or of the intelligence, not the keli, not the vessel. Let me put it. If we would put it into human terms, we would say the main mochen in the person is the spiritual intelligence, not the physical brain. So the same as in Atzilus, there's Oiros and Kalim. So when we speak, the Eitz Chaim says that whenever we're talking about Mochen, we're primarily referring to, look what he says, is the neshama, pnimi is shebetoicha gimel rishaynos mamish, the innermost, the more abstract, spiritual, innermost energy that's in the first 3 spheros in Chachma bin Adas. So what is he indicating over here? So he says, if that's the case, so why do we refer to as the Kalim as well, the general Chabad, the general, both the Kalim and the Or? Why is it all called Moichin? If the primary intention is the neshama of it, the soul of it, so why do we call the entire Chabad, which includes also the vessel, also Moichin? And the answer is, although the reason it's called Moichin is because of this powerful godly light that's in the neshama of the Moichin, of the intelligence, but since the vessels of the Chabad, so to speak, the divine brain, is so much of a keli, it is so much of a vessel, it is so compatible, and it is so absorbent, so to speak, of the light, that it becomes completely unified with the light, that the vessel and the energy become completely one. It's almost like the vessels lose themselves completely into the energy, that you can hardly even tell that there is a vessel there. Similar to what we were learning earlier, we learned the same idea. Remember, in a few classes ago, we learned that that's why the Chabad, including the Kalim of the Chabad, are called Chiyuhu. They're called as life-giving forces. They're not called Garmuhu. They're not called vessels. Because in this level, the vessels themselves are energy. They're hardly considered vessel. But what is he proving from here? He's proving how the moichin, which is the neshama over here of the intelligence, is so particular in which type of vessel it can manifest in. It needs a vessel that can disappear in the light. That's what he's saying. Look over here. He says that in Eitz Chaim it says ki ikar hamoichin ub'chinas neshama pnimi shebeteichel gimel rishaynis mamish. It's the neshama, the pnimi, that's inside the gimel rishaynis, inside the four, not the external but the internal. Ella, but he continues, shanikra gimel rishaynis moichin. We refer to the entire gimel rishaynis, the first three, which is the chachma bin adas. We call that moichin. Why do we call it moichin? V'hainu. The gimel rishaynis, because the first three containers, Hem Kalim, they are such perfect vessels, legiloi or hamoichin, for the revelation of the light of the mochin. Sheshamhu, they are appropriate vessels, and because they are appropriate vessels, that's why the essence of the mochin can reveal itself in it. Unlike the lower spheros, which also receive influence from the mochin, but they're not called mochin. They're called the midos. They're called emotions. They're called something else. Why? Although in them there is also a radiant light of the mochin. The reason they're not called mochin is because they're not real containers for the mochin. And as a result of that, the essence of the mochin does not reveal itself over there. Only a ray, only an external element of it. Shesham, as he says, because in the first three, hu atzmus mahusa mochin, is the very substance and the essence of the moichin. Why liyoisam b'pchinas kelim la'arza? Because they are perfect vessels for this. And as we discussed, he doesn't say it over here, but as we discussed earlier, they're such vessels that they disappear, that we don't even see them hardly. In other words, they're hardly noticed. And that's why the oir is able to enclose himself over there in a very internalized manner. The energy is very open to the vessels. That's only in the brains. However, in the lower sphirot, which are the emotions, and in the vessels of the emotions, if we're looking at a much lower level, which is in the chagas, in the chesed gvura teferes, or in netzach hod yesod, or whatever, in the next range of vessels, over there, the mochin the pnimius of the mochin cannot reveal itself over there. However, they are vessels. They are vessels for what? For a lower power of the soul, which is what? Meir b'chinas oir hamidos, the light of the emotion. In the vessels of the emotion, it's a vessel and a container to allow the energy of the emotions to reveal itself begilu in a revealed way. And this, that there is also mochin shining into the vessels of the midos, of the chesed gvura teferes, of the kindness and discipline and so on. This, that there is mochin over there, is only the external part of the mochin. V'harasan levad, and only a ray of it, but not the internal, more essential part of the mochin. V'kol zeh, now he summarizes, v'kol zeh, and all of this, he comes to the That's because the lights come down in an internalized islapshus. That means in a complete enclothement. The alkain, and therefore tzarech liyas hakeli, because these are oiros pnimium, that means from their very origination point. This is so important to remember throughout the entire flow of the discourse. From their original point where they emanate from the soul, way before they come into interaction with vessels, when they are at their very, very, very origins, when they're being born, when these powers are being born, they already have an intention that they should be internalized. And because they need to be internalized in a vessel, for that reason, they need a vessel. That's the point. It's unlike other types of expression of soul, which are not meant to be internalized, and therefore they do not need a vessel. Because when you're not being internalized, you don't need a vessel. And that's why the keli has to be similar to the level of the light. And just like we see in the physiologically in our physical bodies, the nature of the substance of the material of the brain is different than any other substance of the rest of the body. It is a very delicate material. And obviously the same applies on the highest of levels as well. Because the light needs to be in sync. Since the light becomes enclosed in the vessel, it needs to have a very a vessel that is totally in line with the energy. With this, we concluded chapter 5. Now he does a kitzer, he does a summary. This is a summarization of the last few classes. In other words, he's summarizing whatever we learned in the 5 classes. Now it's already 6th class of the discourse Oteh Erkesalma. What does he say? And the example for this above. Meaning the example before we spoke in the earlier Maamor, we spoke about the human experience, and now he's speaking about the divine experience. In the world of Atzilus, over there is the supernal man. Vehain, and they are why they called a man, just like a man is a soul invested in a body. That's not only a man, that's an animal as well. But the human is a human soul invested in a human body. So the same is the supernal man above is structured similar to our human soul, which means intelligence and emotions, but it's not just abstract and energies, it's energies vested in vessels. And these are lights that become enclosed in vessels. Chesed, kindness, which is the right arm of Hashem. Chulu. So you see there is a compatible vessel that's called the hand. Chachma, moicha. Chachma, wisdom, is called the brain. And chulu. And he says the islapshus oira moichen ubegimel rishaynes dafka. The light of the mochin, which is really the neshama, the pure energy, is only enclosed itself in the first 3. When he says first 3, he means the first 3 containers. V'oira midos, and the light of the emotions, bekli hamidos, rests and manifests in the kalim of the midos, which would somehow similar be God's heart and Hashem's right hand and left hand and the like. However, here as well, the mochin aren't only relegated to their vessel, they extend further into an interloop or flow into the lower powers as well, and all the way down even to Hashem's leg, like we discussed, v'gam b'b'chinas malchus, even into malchus. V'hu inyan chachma d'maisa bereishis, and this is what we discussed not in the last class, but before, maybe the last class a little bit, but 2 classes ago. That's the wisdom of creation, which we said is the wisdom of God's leg, not the wisdom of God's mind. However, zewa ora lavad, that's not the real brains. That's only a ray of the brains. The atzmus hamoichin, and the essence of the intelligent powers of mochin, and begimel rishaynes dafka are only in the first 3. Shehem kelim ela'or, which they are the appropriate vessels for the light. Okay, that concludes chapter 5. And now we go to chapter 6. And this is the reason, based on what we just explained, how the vessels and the energies are matched up with each other. Now we'll take it to the next point that we learned within the human experience. We learned how the vessels, because they are such good vessels for the energy, they have an impact on the energy, which means they translate the energy from being, the effects of the energy from being very lofty to being more concrete. So remember, we learned that the soul, when we gave the human experience, we discussed, in one of the first classes, we discussed how the powers of the soul, for instance, the soul has a power of vision, or the soul has a power of hearing. When the soul is divested from a body, when the soul is in heaven, it doesn't see anything physical, and it doesn't hear physical sounds. It sees spirituality, and it hears spirituality. But when that very same vessel of vision, when that very same power, which is the power of vision and hearing, when they connect to a human body, what happens? The vision of the soul becomes a physical vision. How does that happen? That's the effect of the vessel. The vessel lowers the energy, impacts the energy, thickens the energy, so to speak, to manifest in accordance to the vessel. And soon he's going to say the opposite, how the energy dominates over the vessels. They work both ways. The vessel leaves an imprint in the light. The light is not the same when the light is purely above the vessel than when it comes into the vessel. Because the vessel and the energy get married, they become like a new entity. The energy becomes more coarse, and the vessel becomes more refined. It works both ways. So let's take a look. The same is also above. This is the reason why the supernal vessels has such an impact on the lights. For them to become like the substance of the vessels. And for example, in the effect of bringing the worlds into existence. What does that mean? We know that the primary function of the 10 Sefirot, God emanated them to create and to sustain the world, to create the worlds, to sustain the world, and to to interact with the worlds. Okay, so let's begin with creating the worlds. So the real power to create the world, he's going to explain, comes only from the light, not from the vessels. The vessels of the Sephiros don't have creative power. To create something from nothing requires an infinite power, and that potency exists only in the energy, not in the vessel. However, if the spiritual energy would not go through a vessel, then its potent power to create would create, but it would create beings that are absolutely nullified to God. It would create beings that are completely swimming in the Ein Sof, in God, and they have no sense of self at all. They wouldn't have any beingness. They wouldn't have any substance of self, any consciousness of self. They would exist. They would exist completely submerged in God to the point they would have no consciousness of self at all. There wouldn't be any detection of anything other than God himself. Although the creations would be, because the power to create something from nothing is there in the energy, but it would be a world that is not much of a world. However, since God feeds the creative power, since the energy vests itself in the vessels, since the oir, the light, is enclosed in the vessels of the Sefirot, the vessels are what make that which is created becomes a something, becomes a being, a presence. Let's see inside. And similar to when it comes to the power of bringing into existence. The it says that God is one with the Sefirot. Hashem unifies with the Sefirot, livrei behem, to create with them, Maayon, from nothing, leyesh, to something. The Ishavos, the power to bring things into existence, it's only the light that has the power and the ability to bring something into existence. As the Alter Rebbe explains in the letters in the back of Tanya, in the holy letters, over there he explains why only the light of God, only the Or that's flowing in the spheroids, has the power to create something from nothing. Why? Because he lays out of there a very important idea. Because really, he says, the only one who, now to create something from nothing requires a being who's omnipotent. Omnipotent means who has no limitations at all, who is an all-powerful being. In Hebrew, it's called a kol yachol, someone who can do anything. In other words, creating something from nothing is impossible. What do you mean, something from nothing? So how did it happen? There's no logical explanation how you can create something from nothing. So it's impossible. So you need to bring in someone who can do the impossible. Who is the only one who can do the impossible? Only God can do the impossible. Creations can only do what's possible. God can do what's impossible. So God needs to create something from nothing. However, does it have to be the substance of God himself? No. When God created the world, the actual energy force that brings the world into existence is not God, but God's light. It's his oir, it's his light. You'll say, well, hold it, but if it's light, then it's a light of God, but it's not God. It's an emanation of God. It's a ray of him, but not him. So it's not, how can it do the impossible? The answer is, what is a ray? A ray is a revelation. What does a ray do? When you think about a beam of light, what does a beam of light do? It reflects the source. That's all it does. So therefore, for example, if you have a red light bulb, the light cannot be any other color but a red light. If you have a green light bulb, then the light cannot be any other color but green. Light always reflects its source. So we know sunlight looks very different than moonlight. And a fluorescent light looks different. The color of the light is different than a whatever they call the other types of light, LED light or a whatever other kind of lights. So the lights, every light looks different, has a different appearance, because light reflects its source. So when we talk about a light of God, it's not about itself, it's reflecting its source. Since it's reflecting its source, since God himself is omnipotent and can do anything, so that power is also is revealed through God's light. So God's light being an emanation and a revelation of him, he can create something from nothing. So his light can also create something from nothing, because the light is nothing other than a revelation of the source. So it's the power of Hashem's light that creates. It's the power of Hashem's light that is the real power. Now here's the thing. The vessels of Atzilus, they have already character of their own. They're not a reflection of God. The power of God's kindness is God's kindness. It's kindness. It's not, the light is a reflection of God it's a reflection of the omnipotent, undefined infinity of God. That's the light. The vessel is already something particular. The vessel of Chachma, of wisdom, is wisdom. The vessel of kindness is kindness. That means it's something specific. It's something defined. So it's not a reflection of God who is not defined and not limited. So then if the vessels is already not a reflection of God, so it doesn't have God's omnipotence. So it cannot do the impossible. So therefore the vessels of Atzilus, no matter how lofty and amazing they are, they themselves cannot produce something from nothing. Only the light can do it. However, the light, being that it's working through the vessel, is going to create, but what type of a creation is it going to create? something that the vessel, let's put it this way, the vessel is going to add its 2 cents into the type of, it's going to add something to the mix, something necessary. Because if the lights would be creating without the vessels, it wouldn't be too much of a creation. So let's read it over here, and tomorrow we're going to really explore this deeper. Since the light is a reflection of the source, which is God's essence, only God himself is able to create liyos lahavos yesh me'ayin, and he creates something from nothing. The koyach is havusu ba'atzmus davka, the power to create from ex nihilo, from nothing to something, is only the power of God himself. Tomorrow maybe we're going to add in the next class even a deeper understanding that why only God's very self is able to create something from nothing. However, that power is actualized into the actual creation through Hashem's, the agent. God, so to speak, makes an agent to carry through this act of creation. What's the agent? His light. Now, why is this light able to do so? It actualizes through Hashem's light that he's shining. From the light itself, the light itself, if it would be shining not through vessels, it wouldn't create the somethingness, the concreteness of creations. And only through the vessels does that happen. That means that the vessel is imprinting itself onto the light and making, and the effects of the light is going to be in accordance to the vessel. So, similar to the effects of the soul's power of vision when it's coming through a physical eye, it's going to be physical vision. So it lowers it. And this idea is explaining over here how the vessels have a power over the light, because the lights and the vessels become so integrated and assimilated one with the other. Let's leave the rest, Be'ezras Hashem, for tomorrow to conclude this idea.